Before I get into our kitchen now, these are pictures of our last house. This is our first house that we bought, and we redid the kitchen ourselves in this house as well. We even did the flooring here. Actually, my husband did the flooring, but I took on the kitchen, including that door. I did the chalk paint on the door. I did the painting along with my husband's help. We did get the granite installed professionally, but we did the backsplash. Everything else we did ourselves. And so this is what the kitchen looked like before, and then what it looked like after. And because of this and everything else we did with the house, we were able to make money off of the house, and we were lucky to have done that. But this is really where we learned where to do everything with the new house. This is what our kitchen looked like before. This is after we had moved in, so the granite was already installed. We already had the sink installed. We had a new dishwasher installed, but that was pretty much it. It's just a regular kitchen cabinet, brown, boring. And then this is the peninsula where the stovetop, we did get a new stovetop, so that was put in. You can see some of the drywall up on the side because I did take some of the tile, well, all the tile that was there, I took it down and it just made a big hole. So we had to drywall that. So that's what the kitchen looked like before. And so for the project, I ended up going to Sherwin-Williams. I have done this before, like I said, and so I kind of already knew everything I was going to use, but I used better quality supplies, and so I did go to Sherwin-Williams and they suggested all of these supplies. This actually is a cleaner that I love to use. It works really well. This is the paint, this is the primer from Sherwin-Williams, and then this is the paint that we ended up going with. I set everything up in our living room just because you never know with the weather. Even though it's hot, it sometimes rains. So the first thing you want to do is obviously take down all of the doors, all of the hardware from the doors. Honestly, the setup and taking down the doors and getting rid of the hardware is probably what takes the longest. If you're going to use the same hardware, then I would suggest you put these in Ziploc bags, keep them all together. We were going to change out the hardware, so I didn't have to do that. But this is what it looked like with all the doors taken down. That's what my kitchen looked like for a few weeks. So I then set up the kitchen. Made sure everything was taped off, and again, this is what takes the longest. This is honestly the part that I hate the most, is making sure that all the prep is done. But at the end of the day, honestly saves you a big headache. So the first step is to sand all of your doors and everything you're going to paint. You're not sanding to take off the paint that's already on there. You're basically sanding to get rid of whatever top coat's on there, or as much as possible. So here I'm showing the top one I hadn't sanded, and it's a lot shinier than the bottom one. So after that, and then after I cleaned everything, the first step is priming. So I did go along the edges with a brush, and I just primed all the edges first. I find that priming the edges first is better, and then I went ahead with my roller and primed the rest of the door. And with priming, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not gonna look perfect. It's not gonna look good. You're probably gonna think you need another coat, but honestly, that's just how priming is. You don't need another coat. I didn't need another coat. It worked out pretty well. Now these doors, when I was doing them, I realized I needed a stand, so we got a bunch of the paint cans we had downstairs in the garage that the prior owners left, and I used that because you don't want it to stick to the plastic, so that worked a lot better. So you can see right there what the primer looks like. And then I wanted to finish this first coat on the other side, so I went ahead and did that later that night, and that was what everything looked like. Actually, I think this was after the first coat of the paint. So yeah, I think I had already done the first coat. This was Sunday night, so I had to go to work the next day. But that's what you have to do if you're limited on time, if you work full-time. I was working weekends and then after work, like 2-3 hours every night after work. I think here I was putting on the second coat of the paint, not the primer. That's why it looks a lot better. But again, I was limited on time. But eventually I got that done. I think this was probably the next weekend. I was prepping for trial in the middle of this, my first trial, and so I was very, very limited on time, and so I didn't start this section until the next week, I believe. And so here I had already primed the whole kitchen. And so after I finished painting, this was probably one of the tougher parts, was putting on the new hardware. So the new hardware didn't match the old hardware's holes where the drills go. So the easiest way for me to do this is to make the dots with a marker or whatever you can for the new hardware. And then I would take my drill and make a hole. And here I'm just showing how I was able to make the right length of hole, I guess. My husband showed me how to do this, so I did not know how to do this before, but that's how I made those holes. And then I took a regular screwdriver and screwed in the screws to the new hardware. With the drill, if you do it, it kind of tends to over tighten and can mess it up. And so this is what the kitchen looked like once we finished all the hardware, and you'll see what I'm about to show is that we bought this hardware from CB2, and the hardware on its own was beautiful. You can see it's this marble hardware. These are the handles, and then the other handles we got were these crosses. Same thing, marble, but the more and more I looked at these, the more and more I did not like them. So here we ended up swapping those out and getting these basic ones that we actually had in our old house, and we just ended up going with these again because they just look a lot more modern. You can see they just look so much better. The things about the other ones too is that I don't know what CB2, how they got them or where they got them from, but the screws were not the right screw size, and so we went to Lowe's to find the nut or whatever you call it to tighten the screw on, and it didn't exist. So basically they gave us faulty hardware, and we ended up returning it all. It saved us like $200 honestly getting these door handles, and look at the finished project. Just looks so much better, so much cleaner, not so bulky. So here's a close-up of the hardware and also the backsplash. So stay tuned because I am going to be putting together a part 2, and that's going to be the backsplash and how we did that. It's so easy, a lot easier than I thought it would be. I knew because our last one, it was the same exact thing. And so that's it. That's really what we did with our kitchen. It wasn't a lot. It was very time consuming, really, just because we both worked full time, but at the end it's all worth it. The sweat equity that you put into it, it's totally worth it. I'm very happy with the finishing product. Of course, we still have some work to do, a lot of the little details, lighting, things like that that we do need to change out just to make it a little bit more modern, but overall I'm really happy.